Registered Phenomena Code 129. Object Class Beta Yellow. Hazard Types: Organic Hazard, Regenerative Hazard, Sentient Hazard, Grouped Hazard, Biohazard, Contact Hazard. Containment Protocols: All instances of RPC-129 are to be kept in standard humanoid containment cells. RPC-129-A is temporarily being held at Site-002, while adjustments are made to the dimensions of its holding cell to accommodate for its current size. See Incident 129-A. RPC-129-B and RPC-129-C are to be kept in specialized humanoid containment cells, constructed entirely out of due to its oligodynamic effect. An antimicrobial effect present in certain metals that kills off microorganisms of all kinds. All cells housing RPC-129 instances must be sanitized hourly by on-site janitorial staff. All staff that come within designated danger zones, assigned to areas in close proximity to RPC-129 holding cells, are required to wear standard-issue Level A hazmat suits at all times. Any instruments brought into danger zones for the purposes of testing, sanitation, or otherwise must first be decontaminated via the on-site autoclaves. Container that makes use of steam to sterilize equipment. Entry of any other living organisms in the danger zones that are not approved authority staff abiding by the containment protocols outlined above is strictly prohibited. Description: RPC-129 designates 3 humanoid entities. Instances RPC-129-A through C. Recovered from a series of catacombs located beneath the unnamed freshwater body at the Snowdonia National Park in northwestern Wales. All instances of RPC-129 are around 1.82 meters tall and are covered in dense hair, obscuring most of their bodies, that regenerate rapidly if cut or damaged. Despite multiple X-rays, nothing has been shown to be underneath the hair itself, while all measurements, taken with non-contact infrared thermometers, have shown that RPC-129 instances maintain a body temperature relatively close to that of the average human. 97 degrees Fahrenheit, 36.1 degrees Celsius, to 99 degrees Fahrenheit, 37.2 degrees Celsius. All infrared scans, however, have been inconclusive, as instances appear to have wildly irregular internal thermal regulation. RPC-129 instances possess hands very much like that of primates, most similar to those of humans in appearance. All instances display a level of sapience on par with that of a human toddler, and behave in a similar manner. Roughly around 2 to 3 years of age. Not long after their initial recovery, had instances begun to speak, and express a persistent desire to befriend authority staff, commonly asking for hugs or other forms of affection. It is advised that staff heed any request made by RPC-129 instances, within reason, in order to avoid emotional outbursts that have occurred and resulted in significant damage to containment cells when staff previously ignored instances' demands. All instances of RPC-129 are presumably self-sustaining, requiring no apparent forms of sustenance to maintain themselves. Any living organisms that make direct epidermal contact with RPC-129 instances results in what can be best described as the assimilation of the organism in question. This excludes plants, and presumably fungi. Once contact between the two is established, organisms seem to be pulled into RPC-129 instances. This process appears to cause considerable pain to the organism undergoing it, while instances of RPC-129 seem to be unaware of the implications of their actions, nor the suffering they cause. Assimilation of an organism results in an increase in the height and weight of instances over a period of time, that directly correlates with the size of what is assimilated. Recovery log. After numerous investigations, and the suspects believed to be related to a data breach, in which confidential information was leaked from an authority server, MST Charlie 9, Countryside Hypocrites, was deployed to an isolated area of the Snowdonia National Park, after it was determined to be the location of a prime suspect in the investigation, POI 3483. Upon being apprehended by Charlie 9, POI 3483 informed the unit of a series of catacombs that were located underneath a nearby body of water that contained some dangerous shit, in his own words. An exploration of the catacombs resulted in the acquisition of RPC-129A through C, as well as the discovery of a derelict subterranean research facility connected to the catacombs. Both POI 3483 and the recovered RPC-129 instances were transported to Site-088 without further incident. Incident 129A. Experiment Log 129 RPC-1. Administrator Researcher Uric. Item Number RPC-129A. Subject CSD. ID Number 5357. Gender Male. Age 24. Procedure: CSD subject is to be placed in the RPC-129A's containment cell, with no additional protective layers, other than the provided jumpsuit. Subject will then be tasked with initiating conversation with RPC-129A in order to test the limits of the RPC's intelligence, and obtain a more concrete understanding of how it interacts with humans. Results: CSD-5357 was instructed by Dr. Uric to enter RPC-129A cell. Subject initially refuses, but is eventually coerced by on-site security. Upon entering the holding cell, RPC-129A expresses apparent excitement over the presence of the subject. CSD-5357 appears uncomfortable, presumably due to RPC-129A's appearance and the sound of its voice. Subject's request to be let out of containment is denied. RPC-129A begins to slowly approach CSD-5357, causing the subject to panic and attempt to force the door of the containment cell open. Subject is ordered to face RPC-129A and initiate conversation. Subject refuses, and is subsequently threatened with termination or continued insubordination. CSD-5357 then turns to face RPC-129A and nervously introduces himself, whereupon RPC-129A responds by embracing the subject. Subject is at first startled, but appears to become less tense before abruptly beginning to struggle. CSD-5357 starts to scream, attempting to separate himself from RPC-129A, as he is seemingly beginning to be pulled into the entity, albeit slowly. Subject starts shouting expletives, cursing at the staff and RPC-129A, while simultaneously describing the process as burning. Unknown gaseous emissions can be seen rising off of parts of the subject's body as they disappear into RPC-129A, accompanied by a faint hissing sound. CSD-5357 continues to yell while trying to free himself from RPC-129A, but is eventually unable to struggle once the subject's arms and legs disappear into the entity. Subject then begins to gag and weep, now pleading for staff to intervene, until his face is no longer visible. RPC-129A's arms remain wrapped around the subject until he is completely out of sight. Closing statement. Following this incident, RPC-129A began to grow at a rate of around centimeters per minute over the course of hours. During this time, RPC-129A was transferred to Site-002 as it began to outgrow its current holding cell. Interview Log 129 RPC-1. Interviewed: RPC-129A. Interviewer, Researcher Urich. Forward. Interview was conducted immediately, following the conclusion of Experiment 129 RPC-1. Folding chairs and a table were brought into RPC-129A cell for both Dr. Urich and the entity. In light of Experiment 129 RPC-1, personnel were outfitted with Level A hazardous material suits before entering RPC-129A's containment cell. 2 senior security personnel were present for safety purposes. Begin log. Dr. Urich. Greet. RPC-129A. Hi. Yes. Hello, RPC-129A. What's RPC? Well, it's your name, I suppose. Yes. RPC-129A is your name. Name? Yes. Your name is RPC-129A, and my name is Dr. Urich. RPC-129A is silent, and presumably confused. Do you remember this man? Dr. Urich shows a mugshot of CSD-5357 to RPC-129A. Friend. Friend? Yeah, that's my friend. And where is your friend right now? Here. RPC-129A gestures towards itself. Inside of you? In my heart. All friends are. RPC-129A produces a sort of gurgling sound. They make me happy. I see. Want to meet them? Oh, no thank you. Oh. RPC-129A slumps over in his chair. Sorry. No, you're quite alright. It was very nice talking with you. Can we be friends later? Sure. Later. RPC-129A sits up and begins to gurgle once more. End log. Closing statement. RPC-129A's level of sapience is around where we predicted it would be. However, the entity's understanding of friendship is a cause for some concern. I recommend we attempt to educate the entity to deter it from its problematic behavior. I will be requesting approval to conduct similar tests with RPC-129B and C to determine if the 3 all possess the same modus operandi and/or conceptual framework. I would also like to advocate for all Site-088 staff to be required to wear Level A hazmat suits before entering the vicinity of any RPC-129 instances. Researcher Urich. Addendum 129-1. An interview was conducted with POI-3483, where additional information concerning his involvement with RPC-129 was divulged. Interviewed POI-3483 Ishmael Chick. Chick is a software engineer and self-proclaimed computer programming savant that assisted the Authority during Y2K in his adolescence. Interviewer Researcher Crown. Forward. POI-3483 requested an audience with the Site-088 Director days after being held in Authority custody. This request was denied. However, it had already been determined that POI-3483 would likely possess valuable intelligence regarding RPC-129. Senior Researcher Crown personally requested that the planned interview with the subject be conducted ahead of schedule, due to his sudden willingness to speak with Authority staff. Begin log. Dr. Crown. Good afternoon, POI-3483. POI-3483. I told you to stop calling me that. Are you the guy in charge around here? To what do I owe the pleasure of this meeting? I was wondering how the investigation was going. With the lab, I mean. The lab? Yeah, the lab. Could you explain further? Are you You know, the lab. It's connected to those tunnels where I helped you guys find the Wookiees. originally spelled as Wookiees in the transcript. POI 3483 was adamant that the spelling be changed. The Wookiees? You must be referring to RPC-129A through C. Oh, shit, yeah. Should've figured you guys probably had a more technical name for them. Could you please explain how you came across this supposed lab, and the RPC in question? Well, I like to do a little bit of urban exploring. Generally like sticking my nose where it doesn't belong. It's a hobby of mine. Long story short, I went a couple of places I probably shouldn't have been, and I came across these tunnels, the lab, and those, what'd you call them? RPCs? Affirmative. Affirmative? Jesus, man, you need to get out more. Why did you decide to remain at the subterranean facility that you discovered? I found an underground secret laboratory, buried under some unmarked lake, tucked away in the corner of a supposedly government-protected area. Wouldn't you just be the smallest bit curious? Extraordinary circumstances pushed me to poke around the place, and I found all sorts of spooky shit that convinced me to stick around. Managed to get the power back on, and found that the place had a surveillance system, with cameras down just about every tunnel in those catacombs. You know, the ones with those things in them. But after I found the hazmat suits, I decided not to take my chances exploring that labyrinth. Anyway, they weren't always the big sons of bitches they are now. No. When I got there, the little bastards were all about the size of rabbits, maybe a little bigger. I don't know. Regardless, this lab held a lot more secrets that warranted some concern. Could you please describe… I was getting there, man. No need to be so impatient. Anyway, yeah. After I got a good look at those creatures, I ended up coming across a room full of microscopes and other lab equipment. And I'm looking at what was left behind, right? There are these microscope slides, nothing in them. But I find a bunch of files filled with these documents and other important-looking papers strewn about. I start flipping through them and, hell, I still can't believe it. So those hulking yetis you got locked up in here? They all started out microscopic. You're claiming the RPC-129 instances in question were once microorganisms? Exactly. And those tunnels are full of the very same microbes. That's the most important thing right now. While these things are still invisible to the naked eye, they go and absorb other microbes into them, which they use to grow at an alarming rate, increasing in size relative to whatever poor bacteria they can get their cilia on. And that's when I realized these furballs I saw in the tunnels had, once upon a time, been a whole lot smaller. I do a bit more sleuthing, and find out those tunnels have got all those doors and lights installed, all operated remotely from the same room that houses the security system. I checked for those things on the cameras, and they're all pretty spread apart. There's gotta be at least 100 tunnels down there. Seriously. So I go, and wall off all 3 of the furry little sons of bitches, just in case. Each of them got their own little playpen, all to themselves. And what is it that drove you to separate the instances from each other? Come on, have you been listening at all? I had to keep them apart, so one of them wouldn't be able to eat the other 2 and get any bigger. Of course, they all found a way to keep themselves fed, despite my precautions. Rats, moles, whatever they could find. How do you think they got so big so fast? I wasn't there that long. At least, I hope I wasn't. POI 3483? I have a name. Whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is, these things need to be watched at all times, and whatever you do, keep them away from anything that moves. Hell, from what I could gather from some of those documents, even at the size they're at now, they're still feeding on bacteria and shit. Pardon me? Yeah. That look on your face says it all. Your new guests are bottomless pits, my friend. You're just lucky most of those things end up eating each other when they're still small. Otherwise, you'd have a much bigger problem on your hands. Bottom line, you really need to send some people back to that lab, man. End log. Closing statement. Following this interview, POI 3483 has begun working closely with Site-088 research staff and has assisted in the revision of containment protocols. Though he is now cooperating with Site staff, due to his arrogance and tendency to implement decisions without the approval of on-site researchers, he is not to be granted certain freedoms, and is to remain on-site at all times, under near constant supervision, unless given express permission. Site Director Antron. Addendum 129-2. The RPC-129 recovery site, including the Catacombs and adjacent laboratory, have been designated OL Site-129. An authority presence has been established at the location in order to research RPC-129 instances in their microbial stage, now designated RPC-129 Alpha, and to prevent any instances of RPC-129 from growing any larger than 750 micrometers or greater. Instances that reach such a size are to be terminated on-site